Still working on a couple items on I'd like to call the Butte-Silver Bowl Council of Commissioners regular meeting for Wednesday, May 3rd, 2023 to order. Clerk, can we please have a roll call?
10 present, 2 absent.
10 present, 2 absent. Please note that Commissioner Fortune and Commissioner Shea are excused from tonight's meeting. Commissioner Sorge, could you lead us in the prayer and the pledge?
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. Fellow Commissioners, Almighty God, we implore you, look upon us and guide us this night as we make decisions which will greatly affect our community of Butte-Silver Bowl. Direct our thoughts, words, and deeds so that we please you and best serve our fellow citizens. Amen.
Next, we'll move on to the approval of the minutes. Commissioner Frederickson.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. I move to approve the minutes from the April 19th, 2023 regular meeting.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there anything on the question? Could commissioners please vote? And would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
10 yea, 0 nay.
10 yeas, 0 nay, motion passes. We don't have any items that are not addressed on tonight's agenda, so we'll move on to the Chief Executive's report. I wanted to talk a little bit about last week. We had the Butte Rescue Mission come in and present to us and ask us for some funding, and I just kind of wanted to express my thoughts about that tonight. I believe that that this is something that we should be looking at to find the funding to support this. As we said, the emergency shelter provides us something that we don't have right now, that or wouldn't have, I should say, where it's a low barrier shelter where we have people that when they're in a crisis situation, when they're under the influence, when they have are kind of in need, but not in need of care at the hospital or not to be arrested, that this is a place that we can send them to. So I know that Commissioner Fisher said he had some ideas about something, and I'd like to sit down and we could talk about what that could be with the Butte Rescue Mission, the amount of people that are served, the amount of nights that people stay there, the meals that are served. I think it's important, and it serves a population that I think that we need to do that, because otherwise I think we saw that during the time period where the rescue mission closed and Action Inc. had to open up an emergency shelter for people at that time, and what the cost was to the county at that time. So I look forward to working with commissioners on trying to secure some funding to work to an end to the means here. Also, I saw Ed Bounderup's editorial today, and although I always don't agree with Ed's narrative on certain topics, he said, we used to send people to the poor farm and work things off. He's on track to something, but I don't think we can legally do those things anymore. But I'm working with Judge McCarthy on working a community service program, and I think that's something that we really do need to do to help with the overcrowding that we have at the jail, and also being able to sentence people to when we're working with them. So we're going to be working with those type of things as well. I'll be working with Judge McCarthy, and as we move forward with that, how we're going to look at that. I know that I told you earlier that we were looking at maybe using some of the marijuana funds that we get here locally to try to stand that program. And so we've been doing it, but we haven't been implementing it fully, and I think we need to have a consistent one that we're able to have people that run an effective community service program in our community. So Today I was at the Forest County's conference, and I was able to kind of walk around and see what they're doing in Lewis and Clark County on some of the things that they're working with, and what we're working on at Basin Creek. I see Jim Keenan is in the office today. Him and Tim Leahy tomorrow are going to be doing a presentation to this group at the conference over there, and it's working with the Good Neighbor program. I think that we've become a model. This has become a high priority in Butte-Silver Bowl about the fuels mitigation and the issues that we had there. We've got fast tracked. We got the support of Senator Tester that helped us out, but also we got the partnerships that were needed there. And I've got to applaud Tim Leahy. I got to applaud Jim Keenan and Mark Neary and in their efforts of what we're doing up there at Basin Creek Reservoir to try to mitigate any of the forest fires, because as we were talking about today, it doesn't matter if there's going to be a fire. There's going to be a fire up in Basin Creek Reservoir, but if we don't take care of the fuels that are up there, how bad is that going to impact our community? And so it's important to do this, and you know, like I said, we're fortunate to have the team that we have together here. I'll be back over there tomorrow learning more about the funding sources, grants, and the partnerships that we have going along with that. So it's a great thing for our community. Lots of things going on in the community. I don't, if anyone reads the paper, I think they saw that we had a nice meeting on Monday talking to the community about you know, Superfund issues and the thoughts that the community shared with us and with the agencies. And I think that it's important that we listen, we go forward, and then we really take strong positions of where we stand here as a local government and work together with the agencies. But that doesn't mean that we always agree with some of the decisions that are made there, and we want to make sure that we are representing the community at every step of the way along as we go through that. So it was a really good meeting, and I appreciate everyone that attended there on Monday. So with that, I'm going to close tonight's Chief Executive's report, and we will move on to any public comment on any item on the agenda. If you'd like to come forward, speak on anything on the agenda tonight, state your name, your address, and the item that you'll be speaking on. Seeing none, we'll move on to Section 1, bid openings, public hearings, and or presentations. We'll start with public hearings. We have one here, and it's communication number 2023-172. Karen Malakmy, Butte-Silver Bowl Health Officer, requesting Council of Commissioners approval to hold a public hearing on May 3rd, 2023 for the purpose of amending the fiscal year 2022-2023 budget to allow for increased expenditures of an unanticipated revenue resulting from the collection of fees in the immunization program. County Attorney Joyce, do we have proof of publication?
Mr. Chief Executive, there is proof of publication. It does appear to be in order.
Thank you, County Attorney Joyce. Welcome, Director Malakny.
Thank you, Chief Executive Gallagher, members of council. Thank you for time on the agenda this evening. For the record, I'm Karen Malakny, Health Officer for Butte-Silver Bow. Tonight I'm asking for approval to amend the 2022-23 budget for unanticipated revenue in our immunization program. We exceeded our expectations and hit our mark that we put in the budget last year, and so this is from fees that we've collected and from adding travel vaccines. So it's just to add that revenue back into the budget.
Thank you, Director Malakny. Any questions from commissioners? Seeing none, I'll open the public hearing. I'll call for proponents. First call for proponents. Second call for proponents. Third and final call for proponents. Seeing none, we'll move on to opponents. First call for opponents. Second call for opponents. Third and final call for opponents. I'll close the public hearing. Okay, next we'll move on to bid openings. We have one tonight, communication number 2023-217, Mark Neary, Public Works Director, requesting Council Commissioners concurrence to schedule a bid opening for May 3rd, 2023 for sanitary sewer main replacement near Alaska and Holland Streets. County Attorney Joyce, do we have proof of publication?
Mr. Chief Executive, it's my understanding that they would like to continue this bid opening until May 17th.
Okay. So we're gonna hold this until May 17th, okay? So we don't need to do anything with this, okay? Thank you. Okay, moving on to presentations. We have one tonight, communication number 2023-219, Dylan Pipinich, Butte-Silver Bowl Planning Director, requesting Council of Commissioners permission to schedule a presentation on May 3rd regular meeting agenda to give a presentation to the building code, on the building code program. Director Pipinich.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. Council Commissioners, thank you for allowing some time to talk about building codes tonight. I got a brief presentation to kind of just talk about what we've been up to. So the Butte-Silver Bowl Building Codes program, the reason I'm here tonight is, you know, we're trying to be more engaging with the public and trying to, you know, do some education and some understanding. There's some things that have been happening in the recent past that stem from a lot of miscommunication and a lot of things that are going on. So we're trying to get in front of that. You know, we've been having some public meetings, contractor engagement meetings and things. So I just thought I'd take some time and come in front of this body and talk about some of the things that building codes are doing and some of the outcomes of some of that public engagement. Yeah, the building codes and planning just in general, you know, from starting about 2 years ago, we had a lot of retirements in the department. So I'm actually the most tenured person. I've been with Butte-Silver Bowl for about 5 years. So we've been building from the ground up. A lot of these changes started happening before my tenure as director, but we've kind of carried them on. The last 2 years, we've definitely been in reconstruction phase in the planning department. So a couple of the things, you know, what we've been up to for the last 3 years. In 2020, we amended the ordinance, the Chapter 15, the Building Code Ordinance, to adopt the new codes. It happens every couple of years as the state adopt codes, we adopt codes. And there were some things that came to light at that point. You know, with the last director started looking at this stuff, and we needed to kind of look at the building codes program. One thing that, some things that were showing was, you know, Butte-Silver Bowl hadn't changed anything in building codes since the adoption of building codes in 1978. We hadn't increased staff. We hadn't changed permit fees since 1982. We haven't changed permitting requirements, submittal requirements, really anything. We had, at that time, one person who was doing all the plan reviews, all the inspections, and all the building official things. And of course, building codes have changed a lot since 1978, and we weren't just moving with them. So kind of what had come to light was, you know, development in Butte over a large stretch there was pretty stagnant, and that had created a stagnant building department. Starting about 2016, 2017, 2018, we started getting a lot more building in Butte, and the deficiencies, not necessarily deficiencies, but some changes were obvious, were becoming obvious. So we started looking at kind of how to adjust the building code program. In 2020, we adopted new codes, and if you remember, we started looking at violations for people that weren't getting permits. At that time, we decided that, you know, we would look at first offenses as double the permit fee, and then repeat offenders being $500. So that started in 2020. And another thing that started in 2020 was the requirement to have a certified design professional for commercial projects for plan submittals. We were, to my knowledge, we were one of the last ones in the state to do that, and it's actually required by state law that you do have one of those. So we kind of fixed that gap in 2020. We added some staff. We added a plan reviewer. And then, you know, because of COVID, we were forced to start doing electronic submittals, and we've continued that, which has been great. In 2021, we implemented Excella. That's our online permitting system. That's created a lot of efficiencies internally. It's a software that we use internally. It's not really public facing, at least not at this point, but it really allows for interdepartmental communication and different departments to do the reviews and things like that. And then we increase staff again. And in 2021 is also when we had some of the retiring and the staffing changes that I mentioned before. So then in 2022, just recently at the end of the year again, we adopted the new set of codes. One thing, and I've been kind of touching on this, what's most important is, you know, since that 2020 venture, we've really been looking at the department and trying to figure out what we can do to get on par with the rest of the state and be where we need to be from a building codes perspective. So one thing that we've realized with some of our engagement is the details of how building codes works in Montana is really not broadly understood. So the building code program is actually a state-ran program. We're what's called a certified local government, so we apply to implement the program on behalf of the state. So Title 50, Chapter 60, Part 3, that's in the Montana Code annotated. That lines out how you have to implement your building program. The administrative rules of Montana, those are what adopt the building codes. So the building codes we've adopted, which is, you know, there's 10 books or more now, they're adopted by the state of Montana. And they're amended by the state legislature in the administrative rules. And then local governments that implement these programs just adopt what the state adopts, and you implement what the state adopts. You have some choices as far as appendices, but not much. So we adopt that in Title 15 of the Butte-Silver Municipal Code. Other things that the state requires are, you know, semi-annual reporting, the financials. All the fees from building codes can only be used for your building code program. That's one thing that we noticed in 2020 is, you know, we haven't increased fees, and nobody wants to see increased fees, right? But what is required of us has increased so much since 1982, and it's not costing us any more money. It's kind of a red flag as to are we keeping pace with what we should be doing? You know, we haven't even increased for inflation in 43 years, so that's kind of something that started triggered looking at that. Staffing requirements, they require all your staff to be certified in the international building codes. You can't inspect, you can't do plan reviews or anything unless you have those certifications from the state, and they're pretty stringent on that. There's some, I mentioned some of this, but what's a misnomer that we run into a lot is that people seem to think that these are Butte-Silver codes, or that they're, you know, my department's codes, or my department really has any decision on what's in the code at all. And it's 100% driven by the state of Montana. We don't have any local codes in the building code section that we really have any leeway on. A couple things I want to go through is why building codes are important. That's another thing that we've noticed is it's difficult to get buy-in from the community on building codes. So this here, the building codes program safeguards individuals from potential hazards that are inherent to the construction of new buildings, as well as enlargement, relocation, repair, alteration, or change in use or occupancy of existing buildings. So that's straight off the state of Montana's website. That's probably the most generic answer of why building codes are important that you're ever going to hear. I mean, everybody knows they're health and safety, right? Like that's just common knowledge. That's intuitive. And when you're talking to people and you give them this answer of why it's important, you kind of get that blank stare that some of you are giving me right now. So let's talk about why specifically in Butte they're important. So this is a map of Butte, and the color-coded dots represent every structure in town. And you can see on the chart there, these are the age of the buildings. So from 1800, I think this chart at least said our first building was constructed in 1865. So from 1865 to 1920 is our largest section of buildings here. The red and the dark red, that's 2001 to 2022. That represents 1,500 buildings. So we've constructed 1,500 about buildings in the last 20 years. Every other building in our community is older than that, with the greatest one being older than 1920. I don't know why Butte comes up really small on there, but the top one is Butte, and here's a couple other jurisdictions, and you can see how that graph is significantly different. And the rest of Montana looks like almost like those bottom two. It's a nice bell-shaped curve, with the majority being in the 60s to 2000 and kind of balanced on both sides, right? Butte's not like that. What does that mean for us? Well, the average life expectancy of a commercial building is 40 to 60 years old. A residential building is 60 to 75 years old before they need substantial upgrades. That puts most of our buildings at that point are overdue. So, we're going to be seeing a lot of remodeling, and we got to think of the investments in these buildings. They're not just an economic investment. They're not just an economic boom. They're an investment in our community, and we need to make sure that they're sustainable. So when you think of the code, we need to think of that's the minimum required code that we should be holding to. So we need to be making sure that these aging buildings, many of them are homes, and we don't want them to be, we already have a housing crisis. We need to be making sure that these buildings are being kept to code the best that we can. Here's some other tidbits of information. I don't know if anybody knows, but what does it take to be a contractor in Montana? You have to register with the state of Montana. You know what they require? They require two things. They require you to have liability insurance and workers' comp insurance. That's it. You don't have to have any proof of any trade skill, any knowledge of construction, other than if you're going to be a plumber or some kind of a union apprenticeship like that. As far as a general contractor goes, as long as you have those two insurances, you can go. And one thing that we've noticed in Butte-Silver Bow, you need a Butte-Silver Bow business license, and we've issued 228 new contractor licenses since October of 2020. 2.5 years, there's 228 new construction businesses in Butte. I thought that was a pretty overwhelming number. And with that, that's a good thing, right? That means things are happening in Butte. But with that, we've seen a very large increase of calls of, my contractor did this. Is this to code? None of it was permitted. There's been a lot of issues from a code enforcement standpoint with that boom in construction. So let's talk about Butte and kind of where we fall with the rest of the state. This is probably, this is probably my favorite graph. So this graph represents the area of code in square feet. Now let me explain that. If you take the book and cut all the pages out and lay it out, this is the physical size of the building code, starting in 1973 up to 2018. So the first one was about 200 square feet. That's the number of pages times the size of the page. That's just physically how much code there are. You can see a huge spike in the 90s, and then in 2018, we are still more than double the amount of code that we had when we first consolidated. This is one book. This is the IBC now. We've adopted the International Residential Code, the Energy Code, the Plumbing Code, the Mechanical Code, and the list goes on and on and on. When you stack them up, the books that we review to are this high, and in 1979, it was one book that was about like this. So the requirements have changed a lot over the years. So I'm going to add a red line to this graph as to how Butte-Silver Bow has compensated that in the same time. We didn't change at all. It's a steady line. We adopted the new codes, but we didn't change our processes. We didn't change anything. So that was something that needs to be rectified, and that's what we started doing in 2020. So here's some other stats from Butte. The 2021 valuation permit numbers are on top. In 2022, we did approximately $80 million worth of construction work. We permitted about $80 million worth of construction work. Again, I said that, you know, I want to iterate that again, that that's not just a good economic number. That's not just, you know, it's an investment in our community. That $80 million isn't just the buildings. Those are the buildings that need to withstand the test of time in our community. Every time we build something, it's not just private property. It's not just a new franchise on Harrison Avenue. Those are what's going to be standing, you know, for our future. So that $80 million is an investment in our community. Here's some other things that we noticed when we started diving in is some review times for permitting. For commercial construction, our responses to commercial building permit applications on average last year was 20 working days. That's far and above the state average for most of the bigger jurisdictions was 40 to 60 working days. But the next stat is what we've really been trying to change. The average time then from permit to permit issuance was 60 working days, where statewide it was 50 to 60 working days. While that might seem we're on par, they're taking 60 working days to review it, and they're issuing it in just a couple days, where we're requiring corrections that are taking almost 3 times as long as it took us to review in the first place. So we started asking ourselves, you know, what's causing this? Are we reviewing too much? Are we diving too deep into the code? Should we be catching more things on inspection? You know, our philosophy was that it's easier to change things on paper than it is in the field. It's a lot easier to change something on a drawing than it is to remove a wall or change something at a construction project. So we really started diving into that and started looking at, you know, what are other places in Montana requiring, and where do we stack up there? And this is all with help of the state of Montana. You know, like I said, they're overarching over everything, so we're trying to figure out, you know, where we need to be. This table shows other communities' requirements for plan submittals for construction projects. Butte's on the right over there. These are just things that you find on their permit requirements. We were significantly less than other cities, almost other cities. If you would have looked at this diagram in 2019, we probably would have only had 3 X's under Butte instead of 7. So we've increased a little bit. We're trying to get to where we need to be, but it's also, you know, we don't want to rip the Band-Aid off and you know, snap out of the dark ages in an instant. So we're working towards it. So our next idea to tackle that 60-day permitting time is we need to start doing some public engagement and getting people on board. You know, let's be up front, let's be proactive, let's have everybody understand what you need to submit up front. Then we're not having this back and forth if you don't have enough, you know, and each review time just stacks up time. So let's get out and have some public meetings. Let's let everybody know what they need to submit, and let's go from there. One thing I also want to Thank you. So we want to start being a more active member of the community, more public facing. We don't want to just be the department that's up on the hill that nobody talks to, that just makes you do all this stuff, right? We want people to understand what's going on and just have that engagement. So that was goal number one of this. You know, we want to educate people with where we need to be and tell them why we need to be there, because people don't respond well to regulation if they don't understand why. At least they might not agree with you still, but if you at least give them a reason, they tend to respond. So we wanted to educate, we wanted to listen to the other side, respond to their concerns, and work together and adjust as we need to adjust. I mean, we're a young department too, and we definitely need to make some changes too. So with both of these, we had the commercial project presentation on January 30th and the residential one on March 27th, and we had quite the participation. You know, we took roll at them. We had a sign-up sheet, but there was over 50 people at each of them. I think we had them out at the EOC, and they were, for the most part, well received. You know, I mean, let's be honest, building codes can be a hot button topic. A lot of times, that's not a, that's, you know, there's nothing wrong with that. But we're really trying to resolve that disconnect. So here's some of the outcomes. Number one, and we've been implementing this for a few years, since about 2018, but we have pre-application meetings with developers that have been a huge success, and we wanted to promote that more, especially for the larger projects. You know, a lot of the developers come in and you have a pre-manufactured metal building, or, you know, the building itself is, a lot of these buildings are pretty well worked out in a bunch of other places, but what hangs up that review time is the local requirements. Where's our water and sewer? Where are fire hydrants? What do you need for zoning for parking and things like that? Those site-specific things. And with these pre-application meetings, you have the chance to sit down with everybody that's going to be reviewing it from every department. So, you know, Director Neary's in there all the time. The roads department's in there all the time. The fire department's in there all the time. The health department's in there all the time. And you get to hear, before you get too far down your design, of what some of those site-specific or local requirements are going to make your project different from where you've built it other places. And we've had a huge success with that, and it's led to a lot faster turnaround time on the projects that do those pre-application meetings. There's a lot less comments back from the first review. Other things that we heard about was, you know, the design professional requirement that we added in 2020. That's a cost for developers and contractors to hire an architect or an engineer to design your commercial building or your site. That's definitely an added cost. But, you know, it's a needed one. Not only is it required from the state, but codes these days are so complicated and they're so different, you know, that's why architects go to school and have a career, is for these larger commercial jobs. And it's a really big benefit to everybody to have that on board. We have a waiver requirement, so if you're doing, you know, some small commercial remodeling where you're moving on a non-load bearing wall or you're not really changing anything, you can ask the waiver from that. But for the most part, we require it. And we heard some comments back on that's pretty expensive. Another comment we heard is the required submittals, that we require a lot more submittals than other places in the state require, and that there's things that we don't need to be looking at. And you know, from our investigations, that's simply inaccurate. But review times. The second thing we heard is it takes too long to get a building permit. And I don't disagree with that. That 60 days, you know, is a long time, and that's the thing that we're trying to correct. You know, other places in the state, like I know Missoula's really struggling with, they're inundated with so many applications that they are a long ways out, and that's something that we want to avoid. We want to welcome development in Butte. We want you to come and be able to get a permit, you know, as fast as you can, as long as it meets our requirements. So one of the suggestions was, you know, if we could get a permit in 10 days, that would be really good. Some of the other things that we heard were multiple department reviews. You know, when you apply for a commercial building permit, the fire department looks at it, public works looks at it, the health department looks at it, planning and zoning, building codes. There's 5 or 6 different people that look at it, and that coordinating that effort can really help. And we've made some changes in that regard too. You know, planning has taken the lead and sends out plan review letters. We wait for comments from everybody. We're the point of communication for developers. That seemed to really help. And then the last 2 things we heard are our stormwater requirements are too onerous, and historic preservation requirements are onerous. So that's just to list the things that we heard from those public engagement. Looking forward, you know, the outlook for next year, we have some proposed developments. They're not, you know, completely for sure yet, but they themselves are over what we did total in building last year. You know, the building department, we need to have this put together. We need to be on our toes, because we don't want to compromise life safety or any of our requirements. B, we don't want to hold these developments up. We just need to be kind of ready. And a lot of these developments, you know, or even the interest in our housing stock, we just, you know, we need to be proactive. We're not stagnant anymore. So some next steps that the building department's going to be doing, you know, we're going to continue that community engagement. I don't know how I keep doing that. I want people to be able to be comfortable to come in and ask questions. You know, like I said, it's a lot easier to make changes when you're in that design phase than even when you paid an architect to do a whole design and then we're making them change it because of some local requirements. And we want to be able to adjust with the requirements of the building community and the development community and the community as a whole. So we're going to keep doing that. Code enforcement, that's one thing that I think we've heard across the board in all areas that Butte-Silver can improve on. We're definitely improving on code enforcement. You know, we're making sure people are getting permits. We're working with them that first time that they don't get a permit. The second time is maybe not so understanding. You know, we want to be making sure that people are getting permits and that we're looking at the work that's being done in our community. And here's the biggest thing that I think is coming out of it is we're looking at contracting for third-party reviews for commercial permitting. And that will actually solve most, if not all, of the comments that we got out of the community engagement. We've spoken with several companies that do that third-party reviewing. They do it all over the state of Montana. They've looked at our codes. They've looked at what we require. They've confirmed of what I've shown you tonight is that, you know, we're not at that industry standard for requirements for building permitting. We're getting closer, but we're not there. But they have a lot of resources, you know, a lot more than my 4 building code staff. And with a good application, they can turn around those building permit applications in 10 days. So it guarantees that we're not doing anything different than any other community's doing. We're getting to where we need to be to hold to that industry standard. We're doing it faster. And we're just talking about the commercial building permitting. So our staff would still be reviewing all of the residential. Right now, you're required by the state to turn residential permits around in 10 days. We're pushing that limit. You know, you might, if we do this, you might be able to get a garage permit in a day or 2 and provide that customer service to our residents that are here. So that's seeming like a win-win. You know, we're going to go out for a request for qualifications, get some costs, and figure out, you know, if that's doable. But we do charge a plan check fee, and we have some money to be able to do that. So it would, it's a better option right now than increasing staff. You know, you increase FTEs, that's some liability on the county, but to be able to utilize some contractors to kind of bridge that gap, it makes a lot of sense. So I kind of threw a lot at you guys, but feel free to fire away some questions, and let me know what you think.
Thank you, Director Pittmanich. Do you have any questions First, Commissioner O'Neill and then Commissioner Frederickson.
Thank you, Chief. Thanks, Dylan, for the presentation. One of the questions I have, if you could, on the third-party review, obviously you have to reach out for the cost, but would that be an added cost to the developer on top of, I guess it's another extra added cost? Would it be a, could you choose to do that if you're doing a commercial development, if you want it quicker? Would that be the option? Hey, it's gonna cost this much more to get it quicker with the third-party review, or would you have the option to wait? Does that make sense?
Commissioner O'Neill, Director Pipinich.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive, Commissioner O'Neill. Yeah, we've considered that option. So how the building permit fees work is there's a building permit fee, and a percentage of that is what's called the plan check fee. And that's what pays the plan reviewer staff time to review that. That plan check fee, instead of going to our department, would just pay for the third-party review. Until we get some costs back, we don't know what those are going to be equal, considering we haven't raised our fees for permitting since 1982. My guess is that we're going to be a little bit shy, but it would be a good use of funds. And if you ask a contractor, it's unfortunate that Commissioner Fortune's not here, but getting a permit 10 days faster is probably worth thousands of dollars to a contractor.
Thank you, Director Pipinich. Commissioner Frederickson and then Commissioner O'Neill.
Thank you, Chief Executive Gallagher.
Commissioner Anderson.
Commissioner O'Neill more or less asked the same question, so thanks for that answer. I just want to say thanks for the presentation, and it sounds like you have your work cut out for you, and you're making strides, and so just thanks for presenting, and really interesting. So, good job.
Thank you, Commissioner Frederickson. Commissioner Anderson.
Thank you very much, Chief Executive. Thank you very much, Mr. Pipinich, for being here tonight. I have about 3 or 4 questions and maybe another 1 or 2 depending on the answers you give me. So bear with me. I'm trying to learn a little bit more about this. The presentation was very informative, but like I said, I do have some questions. One of the issues that I have, there's an awful lot of work being done in the community, and I see an awful lot of the contractors, and you mentioned what the state requires for a contractor is just the insurance, state comp and liability. And I was wondering if there was anything that we can add to that. I know we do require them to have a business license, but is there any other things that we can add to that legally, because that's what the state set the bar at? And when they do apply for a license, their Butte-Silver business license, are we checking to make sure that their insurances are in place for those?
Commissioner Anderson, Director Pipinich.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive, Commissioner Anderson. Your first question is a good question. I'm not sure. I'll have to look into that. I can see what other places do. I don't know. But that's an interesting question and definitely something to look into. For the second question, as far as the Butte-Silver business license goes, is no. Matter of fact, most of them are a $35 fee, depending on the amount of employees that you have. All we do is check to make sure that they're in the right zoning designation.
So we're not checking to make sure that they have the state comp or the liability insurance? And is that something, this might be more of a question for County Attorney Joyce, but is that something when we're dealing with somebody who's a licensed professional, quote unquote, when I see 280 people, I don't know, when I see a lot of these fly-by-night people, and when I read this, when I get calls from constituents when they're getting bilked by some of these contractors and people coming in, I just wonder what recourse the people have. And I see Mike Smith scribbling real fast over there, but it's something that I really want to let the people to know, that a lot of these contractors, it seems to me, you know, anybody with $35 can become a contractor overnight.
Commissioner Anderson, Director Pipinich.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive, Commissioner Anderson. Yeah, was kind of the point of me putting that on the slideshow, is to kind of, you know, make you aware of that and make everybody aware of that. As far as us requiring on a local business license, contractors are required to get the state business license. That's not an option. They're required to do that. So we don't personally check to make sure that they're getting that, but I would imagine that state enforcement does that. One thing I did want to read, this is right off the registered contractor section in the state of Montana's website. It talks about the benefits and checking to make sure contractors are registered and things like that. And one of the benefits they said is credibility. And it says on the website, those who complete the paperwork and pay attention to the law may also be more likely to care about the quality of their work. So that was one of the benefits of their advertising for people to check if their contractor's registered. And that made me a little nervous too. You know, it says they're more likely to care about the quality of their work. You know, I guess we have to take that for what it's worth.
Yes, and follow up if I could.
Okay, follow up, Commissioner Anderson.
Then the next one kind of goes into the fine process. It seems like there's different people who would need to get the permits and file for the permit. Who is the onus on for that? Is it the developer? Is it the homeowner? Or is it the construction company who's doing the work? I know that you were talking about, the first one is double the fine for the permit. Say the permit's $500, then you charge them $1,000 for the fine. I imagine $500 fine and $500 for the permit. And then after a second or third offense, they lose their privileges to apply for a permit for something that was in judiciary with parklets and pedlets. Is that the same with the buildings, where they'd lose their ability to do that? And who would lose their ability to do that? Is it the contractor or the homeowner / developers in this case? Or is it all the above?
Commissioner Anderson, Director Pipinich.
Mr. Chief Executive, Commissioner Anderson. Okay, so first I wanted to address one more thing on your previous question is the way that the process is set up to ensure quality of work, you know, instead of licensing of contractors, like I said, you just need that insurance, is the permitting system. I mean, that's what it's for, right? Mm-hmm. So to combat these fly-by-night contractors, we need to be making sure that they're getting permits. We need to be red-tagging people that don't get permits, and then we need to be inspecting the work. So my department's view has been, instead of, vetting qualifications, it's just looking at the work itself. So we estimate that from a residential remodel standpoint for sure, but maybe even a commercial remodel standpoint, there's a lot of unpermitted work going out there, and we're doing the best that we can to take that on. As far as the penalties go, the first offense, like I said, is double the permit fee. Your example of $500, most permit fees, I think a complete house is $500. Like a lot of the ones that we're catching are like roofing contractors, where the permit fee is $40. So double 40, $80, is what we're getting out of that. The second one is double the permit fee plus $500. So for that same roofing permit, $580 hits a little bit harder than that extra $40. We do not have a requirement for repeat offenders that you can't apply for permits. And the reason that we don't have that is we would think that they would just be doing work anyway. And we want them to be able to, we want to inspect the work, basically. We want them to get permits. We want to be able to look at the work that's being done. As far as the responsible party, building code reads that owner and contractor are equally responsible. We tend, it's the contractor that's usually applying for permits and has to pay that fine. My guess is they probably pass that cost on to the homeowner. Sometimes if you can't find the contractor, or the contractor is the homeowner or something like that, we go that route.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Pipinich. Commissioner Sorge.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. Dylan, thank you for being here tonight. It's really informative. I think it's always good when you can come in to educate us. I know for myself, I need a lot of education. So my question is, you said you're talking, as far as the public input and public feedback, you talked about some of the feedback you got was the historic preservation and also stormwater were probably too strict, as far as some of the local. I can understand the historic preservation, Butte-Silver takes their historic preservation pretty strict. But why would people be saying stormwater why would they be complaining about the stormwater regs? Are these people from out of town, or are these, because it was in the DEQ or somebody would be mandating?
Commissioner Sorge, Director Pipinich.
Chief Executive Gallagher, Commissioner Sorge. So the complaint was that it's in the stormwater ordinance that you have to have a stormwater permit in hand before you can issue any other permits, before we can issue any other permits. So the Public Works Department manages our stormwater program. They have third-party reviewers too. They rotate through some local engineering firms that review that. And their review times are 20 working days, similar to ours. That's in their statute. We're unique compared to other places because we're what's called an MS4. That means that our stormwater is not treated before it goes to the creek. So we have actually some more stringent requirements than the DEQ does. But the complaint at that time was, let us work on it while we're building the building thing. Like, trust us, we'll get the stormwater done. But we'll get to the same point at the end. Don't make them, and we do review them concurrent, but we won't issue a building permit until your stormwater's figured out, because in some places, maybe it doesn't get figured out.
Great. Thank you, Dylan.
Commissioner Reardon.
Thank you, Chief Executive Gallagher. I want to really thank you for taking this out of the 70s and progressing so far as you have. I know it wasn't an easy battle, and I think you got a great staff that are hard workers. I just have a question, and I think it's hit at basically the committee meetings and all that stuff regarding, obviously everything is about revenue, right? And I think we've talked about it before and all that. And I'm still, I guess, stringent. Everybody around this table is known about the fees for the utility hookups in these subdivisions. It's a great revenue maker. It's happening all over Montana and all that, and would help, basically the planning department and all that. And talking, I think the last time we visited about it was about 3 or 4 months ago. And I was wondering if you could fill us in on the progress of this situation that would greatly enhance the revenue of Butte-Silver. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Reardon. Director Pipinich.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive, Commissioner Reardon. I'll try to summarize a little bit here. So there's a lot of things that are going on, and one thing we haven't really been touched because it gained a lot of traction at the legislative session is impact fees. Butte-Silver does not charge impact fees. So an impact fee is basically a fee that you charge a developer for their contribution to your municipal systems, so that if you need to extend municipal systems to create more development, that you have that pot of money to do it, right? Like, what you don't want to happen is you let everybody connect to your metro sewer plant until your metro sewer plant's full, and then you tell the next guy, you gotta build us a new plant. I mean, that's obviously an extreme example, but that's kind of what the intent of impact fees are. A lot of places charge impact fees. We don't. That's been kind of a marketing tool in the past to tell developers, you can connect to our system, we have all this capacity, you don't need to pay us to do that. And it's also kind of a indicative of, we have infrastructure that was built for 100,000 people and we have 35,000 people, we got some room. That's not always the case in every area. Traffic lights could be impact fees, things like that. So we haven't gone down that path because of some bills at the legislative session. We're going to restrict that. I don't know where that ended up, but operating an impact fee program is quite a bit of work on the local government to do the accounting process and to keep that up to speed. As far as connection fees go, I think what you're referring to is like when you physically tap into our system for water or sewer. You know, for instance, our sewer tap fee is $10. You know, we go out there and you build a new house and your sanitary service line goes to the main. We charge you $10 to hook it up. That's another thing that hasn't changed since the 70s. We are way low on that aspect as well, but we haven't really moved towards solving that problem yet either.
Thank you, Director Pipinich. Is that, we good? Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you, Chief Executive Gallagher. Dylan, thank you. Great presentation, very informative, very educational. It really brings out the oversight the state has on your department. And one of the things that's just a comment, and I know you have no control over this, it just would drive me crazy to think you could get a contractor's license without being bonded. And I mean, I don't know where the state's failing us on this, but I mean, if you can get a contractor's license without any bonding, I don't know of any business you can go into where you're serving the public where you're not getting bonded. And I know you have no control of that, but thank you for the presentation, and hopefully we can get that fixed in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Fisher. I know that's one of the things, and I'll go right to you. One of the things that I think that we need to really educate the public to request that their contractor be bonded and insured, because that's I guess an education piece that maybe we can put out there for it. Commissioner Callahan.
Thank
Sorry.
you, Chief Executive Gallagher. Dylan, I just got a question. I'm not sure if you were here the night about a month ago when a bunch of the trades were up here and they were rallying against one of the scams that some of these contractors are coming in and doing, where they hire their employees as a subcontractor. That way they don't have to worry about the workman's comp and the state tax and all the liability that goes with it. Is there any kind of safeguard? I see we got a couple gentlemen from the Carpenters Union that were part of that rally, and they're trying to make everybody aware of what's going on, which, you know, until somebody wakes us up to it, we don't know what to watch out for. But they're going through the state. They went to the legislature. They're making it, you know, because we had a big run on right to work state. Do we have anything in our codes to, how do you catch this guy if he's having everybody as a subcontractor? Well, if you're a subcontractor, you also have to have workman's comp. You have to have that. So how do you catch every employee? Do you go in and check every employee to see if they have those to be able to be a subcontractor? Or do we have a safeguard to catch that?
Commissioner Callahan, Director Pipinich.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. Commissioner Callahan. No, locally we don't have any safeguards for that, and you know the unions lobbying at the state level is probably where they need to be doing that, so that it's statewide. Yeah, plumbers obviously need to be licensed, and they go through the apprenticeship and everything, and you can't get a plumber's license without doing that, and the same with electricians. But as far as general contractors and stuff like that go, it's fairly unregulated. But all that would need to happen at the state level.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Director Pipinich. Any other questions? Commissioner O'Neill.
Thank you, Chief Executive. Dylan, just one more question on the pre-application meetings. Two questions you can answer at the same time. Is this something you guys just kind of started? And then how long, I guess, how long have you been doing them? And then how often do you have them? I imagine it's just case by case on a certain big project. Just wanted to, thank you.
Commissioner O'Neill, Director Pipinich.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. Commissioner O'Neill. I started doing it when I came on to Butte-Silver in 2018. First, we started doing bi-weekly internal construction project meetings so we could keep all the departments, apprised of what's going on as far as building and construction goes, because really every department has a hand in this. It's not just planning and building codes. There's just as many requirements in public works and fire and health and all that. So that's one thing that we've just been really trying to work towards for the last 5 years or probably more, is better interdepartment coordination. And then the pre-application meeting, it just kind of came intuitive. You know, people would send planning a list of questions, and we could answer 2 of them, and 2 of them were for public works. So finally, we're just like, let's all sit together in a room, and you know, you can ask the public works director, and you can ask the fire marshal, and you can ask any questions that you want. Sometimes we have multiple for different projects. We don't require it. You know, we don't want to make people have to do that, but it's definitely something we offer to every development that comes to my office with a proposal, and they've been greatly accepted. You know, we get compliments from it all the time. At the end of it, we send a recap letter that states everything that we talked about, and so that everybody's on the same page. And that's the biggest thing, is getting everybody, not only locally, you know, in Butte-Silver Bow on the same page, but on the same page with the design team for projects is very beneficial. And we've, you know, most of the comments we've heard back is, nobody else does this, nobody else takes the time or has the time to do this. And, you know, I hope that we don't get so busy that we can't do it anymore. We're gonna make sure that we don't. We'll keep staff up to do it.
Thank you, Director Pipinich. Any other questions? Commissioner Anderson?
One more question, well, kind of a 2-part question, I suppose. Trying to formulate it in my head exactly right. One of the biggest components about this, it seems like, is education to the public, and especially for us, and thank you for the presentation, because it is very informative, but you mentioned a few times getting the word out to the public, and so they understand and everything else. And I imagine a lot of this is fairly easy to find, or not so easy to find for a lot of people on the website. I look at a lot of our population in town, and a lot of it is fairly elderly, and I know that a lot of people have trouble finding things on the internet. When I get a call, I tell people often they can get it on the internet, and they go, I don't do internet, and it's like, I'll figure it out and let you know later. But in that regard, just kind of a comment, thank you for this presentation, and thank you, Mr. Smith, for writing about it and for your story in the very near future, I imagine. But I don't know if it would be a question for you or Public Works Director or Chief Executive, but would it be possible and feasible in your mind to put together a list of some of these frequently asked questions and what people need to look for, and throw that in the water bill, so we could send out like a warning to everybody that this is the importance of building codes, this is what you should look for with your contractors, and this is what we require. It seems like it would cut down on help with the permitting if everybody knew what was going on. If they have a water bill, those are the ones who are gonna be doing a lot of this building codes, especially for remodels, and who are gonna get hit by the shady business dealings. So it would seem like a good opportunity to hit a lot of these points that you're talking about, is putting something out there in the form of a flyer or something. Is that something that we could throw in the water bill mailings?
Commissioner Anderson, I think that that's something that, you know, I could work with Director Pipinich. I believe that they have informational pamphlets that they have within their office, but I think that it would really need to be concise. The only challenges that we have is that our population is 10. I think we have mailings of about 10,000. I'm not even sure. 12,000. So that hits, you know, that misses a lot of our population as well. But yeah, I guess I would have to ask Director Pipinich if that was something that we could do. Is it something that we can make concise enough that would be informational? We don't want to make it too confusing for him, but yeah. Director Pipinich.
Thanks, Chief Executive Gallagher, Commissioner Anderson. Yeah, we've kicked around a lot of ideas. We've done that before. It's been a while since we've done that. And you're right, we have a lot of frequently asked question sheets and a lot of handouts and flyers and available at our office. And one thing that was brought up at the last public engagement was Doug Stordahl from Triple S offered that we make like a little kiosk at Triple S, so when people are buying lumber or buying tools or something like that, you can see that, you know, did you get a building permit? Do you need a building permit? What's the advantages of getting a building permit? You know, one thing that I like to sell all the time is like, you get a couple $100 permit, and really what you're purchasing is the ability to call an inspector and ask any building questions you have at any point during your project. He'll come at any day, you know, and I really want to promote it as not a regulatory thing, like this guy's here to catch you doing things, but this guy's a wealth of information that you can call him to come every day. It doesn't cost you anymore. You pay for that with your permit. So yeah, I like the idea of, you know, putting a Triple S or the other building suppliers. We started hopefully I don't regret saying this, but we started a Facebook page, so like and follow our planning department Facebook page. But, you know, realistically, you got to get on that social media bandwagon, and, you know, we just need to be more involved.
Thank you. And just a quick follow-up, something like what you're talking about with Stewardall and Triple S is exactly the type of thing, you know, this is building insurance and pointing out those information and putting that out in a flyer or something to the community, and even hitting a third of the community at 12,000 would be very beneficial.
Sure.
To, you know, you're probably hitting over half with the third mailings because of all the married couples and kids, but I think it'd be a great opportunity to reach everybody and just to make sure that they're in compliance with it. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Commissioner Anderson. Thank you, Director Pipinich. Great presentation. Work safe. All right. Moving on to tonight's consent agenda. We have A 1 through 4 and B 1 through 32. Do we have any friendly amendments and or segregations? Commissioner Frederickson.
Thank you, Chief Executive Gallagher. So we have a couple friendly amendments to the agenda, and I want to apologize for the delay earlier and thank Commissioner Thatcher for pointing these out. So communication 16 communication number 2023-237, that the links on the in the attachments are correct, but the actual wording within the communication was wrong. So we're going to make a friendly amendment, and I'm going to read what the text should have been. And this comes from Director Mark Neary. It says, on March 15th, there was a bid opening held for garage doors and openers for the Road Division storage facility. The Public Works Department received one responsive bid from Alpha Overhead Door, Inc. This agreement allows for the purchase and installation of 12 garage doors and openers for a total cost of $118,066.84. I am requesting council approval for the chief executive to sign the agreement with Alpha Overhead Doors, Inc. for the 12 garage doors and openers. So we're gonna make that change on the agenda with that communication, and then hopefully we'll still concur and place on file, and we can hopefully get to work on these garage doors. The next friendly amendment is 17 communication number 2023-238. That one should just go away. Right? No, that one's going to be moved down to 18 communication number 2023-239. The attachments within that.
No, I think they are what we like. Goes to 17.
Oh, right. Thank you. So the wording for 16, Jim Keene, Water Plant Superintendent, requesting Council Commissioners authorization to have Chief Executive Gallagher sign an amendment number 1 to the Great West Engineering contract for Basin Creek Dam number 1, should be the wording in communication 17 within the text. So it's still the same links and everything, but that text should be in 17. And then 17, and then 18 is correct. If you notice, the text is
Correct.
correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the friendly amendment is on 16. That would be the text that has the garage door communication in there will be changed. Communication 17 will move the information from number 16 to 17. It just was a mix-up in the different, as it was posted on tonight's agenda.
And then I also have a segregation, if we're okay on that.
Okay, segregation, yep.
The segregation will be 23, communication number 2023-243.
Okay. So segregating that. Any other segregations tonight? Commissioner Mankins.
I would like to just segregate number 3, communication number 2023-224.
That is item number 3, communication number 2023-224. Any other segregations? Seeing none. Commissioner Frederickson.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. I move to approve Section 2 of the consent agenda, A 1 through 4 and B 1 through 32, with the friendly amendments that we discussed earlier, with the exceptions of 3, communication number 2023-224, and 22, communication 2023-243.
Oh, we have a motion and a second. Anything on the question, Commissioner Thatcher?
Thank you, Chief Executive Gallagher. I guess I thought that communication number 2023-243 was communication number 23, not 22. And so Commissioner Frederickson included number 22 within the amendment, or within his segregations, but I thought he included.
Yeah,
Correct.
thank you, Commissioner
thank
Thatcher.
you,
It should have been
Commissioner.
23.
So we are segregating item number 23, communication number 2023-244. Thank you. 243? Yes. So we're going to 22. No, 23 is on mine is 244. Okay. What is the correct one? I get it, but I'm just saying.
Oh, yeah.
Well, Chief Executive, if I may. So yeah, the printed version is 2023-243.
Okay.
But posted online, it's communication number 2023-244. So I would think I would need a little direction from the county attorney.
Mr. Chief Executive,
Okay.
the Clerk and Recorder's Office has just indicated that the first time the agenda was printed, the numbering was off. Is that right? And so then it was republished with the correct numbering. So it is supposed to be
244.
243, right? What's online right now is the correct version. So
Okay,
it's
and what's
243.
on right now is 243.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, so the online version is 244. So I will change my segregation to 23 communication number 2023-244.
All right. So there was a mistake on the original one that was posted, and now the corrected version is online currently, and so that would be communication number 2023-244. Commissioner Thatcher.
Thank you, Chief Executive Gallagher. So I guess my question would be, on my version, 243 is the public hearing, 244 is the presentation. So they're two separate things is what I'm seeing here. So could you maybe provide some clarification?
Commissioner Thatcher, and so Kristen can, so Ms. Rosa, could you please?
Kristen Rosa, Community Development. I am requesting to have the public hearing. So on all the communications I see, it's number 2023-243. I need the public hearing switched from May 17th to May 24th. We will still hold the presentation on May 10th.
So now we need So we're gonna.
I don't even know I have the one that's not correct. So yeah, my segregation is 2022, communication number 2023-243.
Okay, so we are not segregating item number 23, we're segregating item number 22, communication number 2023-243. So
I'm looking at the online one right now.
okay, Commissioner Thatcher.
I guess maybe we should go off of one and stick with it, because 23 on the printed version, communication number 2023, number 23 is the communication that Director Rose, or Mrs. Rose is asking for on my sheet. Number 22 on my sheet is for Kate Woods, which is a completely different communication. So I think we need to go to one communication and agree on it. Thank you.
Yeah, Commissioner Thatcher, I think that the updated one, I think that you've got an outdated one that you're looking at. Am I correct? So the communication number 22 is Kristen Rosen, Economic Development Director, requesting Council Commissioners' approval to hold a public hearing on May 17th. Is that the one that we're talking about?
Yeah.
Currently?
It is.
Yes, and so I think so the numbering of the one that you had gotten, no, you're fine. It
you're
was
all good.
confusing. We had some corrections that needed to be made, and so we want to make sure that we are correct in what we're doing here. So what we're segregating is item number 22, communication number 2023-243. That's the correct one that we're going to do, and it's just based on that things got updated and corrected after the fact, and so I think we're good. But do we need to amend our motion because the original motion?
I haven't made an emotion yet.
Well, there was a motion and a second, and then Commissioner Thatcher
I got you.
asked. So now we need to amend the ones that we segregated.
We can start this over. I'll amend my motion. I move to approve section 2 of the consent agenda 1 through 4 and B 1 through 32 with the exception of 3. Communication number 2023-224 and 22 communication number communication 2023-243.
We have a motion and a second to approve tonight's consent agenda. Is there anything else on the question? Commissioner Anderson.
And I just want to make sure that motion does include the friendly amendments that we did make to 6 and 7.
Yeah. With the friendly amendments.
Yes. With the friendly amendments.
Yes, okay, all right. So we have a motion and a second. Anything else on the question? Could commissioners please vote? And would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
Ten yea, 0 nay.
10 yea, 0 nay, motion passes. Moving back to item number 3, communication number 2023-224, Cindy Winston, Community Enrichment Coordinator, requesting Council Commissioners authorization to have Chief Executive Gallagher sign a professional services agreement between Butte-Silver and CCCS Incorporated for management and physical site of the Alley Rally program. Commissioner Mankins.
Thank you, Chief Executive Gallagher, and I just wanted to just say a quick word that thank you with your leadership and with the partnership with CCS and Mike Thatcher and whoever else with Cindy Winston, Ed Randall, whoever else with Community Enrichment to get this program going again. I know the community is excited to have the Alley Rally back again. Just a few questions with it. Dates and times. Do you know at this time when it will be opening and what will be the times and dates?
Do we have that? I don't have that in front of me, but I think Director Gleason may have that for us to give us that answer. Director Gleason.
Chief Executive Gallagher, Commissioner Mankins, it's in the scope of work, and it lists that the Dates and times are Tuesday through Sunday, starting at 10 a.m. and close at 6 p.m. The alley rally is closed on Mondays. The alley rally will be open on Saturday and Sunday, starting at 10 a.m. and close at 6 p.m. So all those details are outlined. I believe it begins May 16th. Yes, it's also in the scope of work. It begins on May 16th, 2023, and
then
ends on
closes.
August 6th, 2023.
Yes. Okay. Thank you,
Si-
Director Gleason. Okay.
One more
Okay.
question or follow-up, Chief Executive, Director Gleason, is it at the same location?
I can answer that. So that it is at the same location it was last year, where it's behind the Roundhouse. That is correct, off of Continental Drive.
Great news. And just with that, then I would like to concur and place on file communication number 2023-224.
We have a motion and a second to concur and place on file communication number 2023-224. Is there anything else on the question? Could commissioners please vote? And would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
10 yea, 0 nay.
10 yea, 0 nay, motion passes. Moving to item number 22, communication number 2023-243, Kristen Rosa, Economic Development Director, requesting Council of Commissioners approval to hold a public hearing on May 17, 2023 to hear public comment about the proposed tax abatement under Montana Code annotated 15-24-1502, a 75% tax abatement for a newly expanding industry. Commissioner Frederickson.
Thank you, Chief Executive Gallagher, and I just want to apologize for all the confusion on this. We'll work to make sure that this doesn't happen again. But as Director Rosa alluded to earlier, we need to put this, to make this May 24th instead of May 17th, because we weren't able to get the notification for the public hearing into the newspaper. So I'll make a motion to hold this in abeyance.
We have a motion and a second to hold this in abeyance. Is there anything on the question? Could commissioners please vote? And would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
10 yea, 0 nay.
10 yea, 0 nay, motion passes. Moving on to Section 3, ordinances and or resolutions introduced to judiciary. We have 3. Please note those. And moving on to Section 4, ordinances and resolutions for final reading. We have 1, Council Bill number 2023-02, ordinance number 2023-02. Clerk, please read the caption.
An ordinance amending Chapter 12.17 of the Butte-Silver Municipal Code, BSB-MC, entitled Parklet Pedlet Permits, and specifically adding a new Section 12.17.110 entitled Violation Penalty, and providing for an effective date herein.
Commissioner Frederickson.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. I move to place resolution number 2023-02 on final reading and passed, having been deemed fully read at length.
We have a motion and a second placing Council Bill number 2023-02 on final reading. Is there anything on the question? Could commissioners please vote? And would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
9 yea, 1 nay.
9 yea, 1 nay, motion passes. So moving on to calendar and other meetings and events. Please note all of the dates of the meetings. And next we'll move on to any public comment on any matter not on the agenda tonight. If you have any item not on the agenda tonight that you want to speak on, please come forward. Seeing none, I will take a motion to adjourn. All in favor, signal by aye. Opposed? We are adjourned.